Lighthouse Thursday Night Family Group. Today is September 22nd. Tonight we're going to talk about in the internal dysfunction that leads to the external chaos, which sounds really complicated, there's a lot on the board, but we're going to move through it pretty quickly. Let me start off by reading this. This is about self-perception, and what we find. I'm going to give you the definition, the ASAM definition of addiction, and it all boils down to self-deception. And we talk about this all the time. If we're gonna live new, we have to change our thinking. We have to gain a new perspective. And this is about self-perception, how we tend to see ourselves. Our addiction may be so ingrained in us that we define our identity by it. We may even begin to feel that we are predisposed to behave as we do. We may grow discouraged as we are condemned for behaviors that seem beyond our control. How can we escape our self-perception that causes us to define ourselves in terms of the addiction that dominates our life? One passage in Scripture seems to identify people by their behavior. Those who indulge in sexual sin, or who worship idols, or commit adultery, or are male prostitutes, or practice homosexuality, or are thieves, or greedy people, or drunkards, or abusive, or cheat people, none of these will inherit the kingdom of God. This doesn't seem fair. We feel like we will never be able to escape our addictive nature. But the passage continues. Some of you were once like that, but you were cleansed, you were made holy, you were made right with God by the calling of the name of Christ and by the Spirit of our God. Anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone and the new life has begun. God doesn't just erase our behaviors when we identify ourselves with Him. He gives us a new identity. We will always remember what we were and realize that our sinful nature and our body may always be predisposed to a particular addiction. We may even still slip up at times, but we need no longer define ourselves by our addiction. In Christ we are forgiven, cleansed, holy children of God. That comes up so often, trying to discover our identity. And it is hard to break this old idea that we're so associated with, not even just addiction in and of itself, but the poor decision making, the deep-rooted sense of I'm not enough. And it's so easy to get stuck in that. And then we get an opportunity to change, but we can feel so discouraged. It's not going to matter anyway, because we have such a low self-image of ourselves, and that's why I like that old saying, just one day at a time, one hour at a time right now. Okay, so let's get into this. This is kind of interesting. The ASAM stands for the American Society of Addiction Medicine, and in their description of addiction, there's a lot of definitions, a lot of descriptions. Probably the most common one is continued use in spite of negative consequences. We just can't stop. And of course, we've recently done some things on the brain, and so everybody understands that there is something genuinely happening in the brain, but we can also overcome it. And the result of all of that is, just looks like bad behavior. And so it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people, maybe families, society, to have compassion, because our behavior can be so repulsive, so self-centered and all this stuff. But there's an internal dysfunction going on in us emotionally, cognitively, that just leads to this outward chaos. And so the way we move through that is to understand it a little bit more. We've got to recognize what's really going on and then follow the solution. So don't, even though, I'm going to describe the problem quite a bit, but the solution is always so simple. And I think for a lot of us, it can seem too simple, which is a huge part of our internal dysfunction. We tend to think we require some sort of special solution, or it's got to be way more complicated than just getting up every day and making my bed and brushing my teeth and eating breakfast. And it's got to be way more complicated than that. But the reality is it isn't. It's simple. But we have a long history of complicating very simple things, and that's all trauma based. But here's the description from ASAM. Addiction is characterized by an inability to consistently abstain, impairment of behavioral control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problems, right? We always tend to minimize our own behavior. Let me finish that sentence out. Diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behaviors and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. A much easier way to say that is addiction comes about because of our inability to handle life's difficulties. The big book in the promises, in the 9-step promises, talks about that we will, in recovery, we will come to know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And the addict brain believes that they're not supposed to have problems. And so we go to great lengths to and exert our high need for control of people, places, things, and situations, believing that if I could just control my environment, if I could control all my externals, then I wouldn't have to feel this way, or I wouldn't have this problem, which is, of course, the wrong approach. Everybody has problems. We have life issues to deal with. Recovery is about learning how to handle problems. And, of course, I think in our infancy stage, a problem is defined as anything that causes us to feel some negative emotion, right? A problem is defined as I'm not getting what I want. And of course, as we grow and we mature, problems get less and less and less because we start to define them differently. An actual problem is something that requires problem solving, not emotional solving. Okay, there's another factor, and this is what our whole topic is built on tonight. Other factors in addiction are cognitive and affective distortions which impair our perceptions and compromise our ability to deal with our feelings. Let's take that slow. Compromises our ability to deal with our feelings, resulting in a significant self-deception. Now, of course, throughout the week in groups, we break all these things down. This is just a really good overview. But, think about that. That one line in and of itself really sums it up, I think, is our ability to deal with our own emotions is completely impaired, it's compromised, it's out of whack. And that's why we tend to have like 2 degrees, right? We're either very angry, just pissed off at the world, or we're depressed, right? Which both of those aren't actual feelings, they're not emotions, they're conditions, right? And then we bypass all of those primary emotions in between. On the continuum, we've got super angry and really depressed, and there we get stuck, believing that if only I didn't have to feel like this, then I could move forward, then I would be okay. If only, and of course, what's required is somebody else has to do something different. If only my boss would, my mom would, my neighbor would, my dog would, if only the weather, the economy, if only, the if onlys, then I wouldn't feel this way, which keeps us in this position of needing something outside of ourselves to be different in order for us to be okay. That's what addiction is. It's a complete distortion, a complete just out of whack perception of how to deal with anything in an appropriate way. Okay, so in more detail, this is what that internal dysfunction really looks like. So we use our ego as a defense mechanism, right? And some of you guys might recognize a lot of this material from the Big I, but we use our ego as to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves, to avoid. We're trying to keep ourselves safe, emotionally safe, but what actually happens is we wreak havoc for ourselves and others, right? The minimizing, the avoidance, the pretending to be something that we aren't, this shallow thinking that if only you would do something different, then I would be okay, or if only this other thing would happen, then I would be okay. And leaving us in a position where our emotions, how we feel at any given moment, is literally dictated to us by our experience, right? Or AA would refer to that as people, places, things, and situations. Right? Now just sit in that for a minute. This is why we have so much anxiety. How I feel at any given moment is determined by you. Right? Or something outside of myself. When we first start hearing, you actually get to dictate your own mood. Right? In recovery, you get to dictate your own mood. Everybody goes, oh no, that's not possible. Well, yeah, it is, but we have to change the way we see the world. We have to change the way we see ourselves in the world. We have to take responsibility for what we're feeling or what we're doing, and stop looking outside of ourselves to fix that. And so this is the part that leads to all that impulsivity, all that need for instant gratification. A sense of boredom, right? We all go, oh man, I'm so bored. We're always looking for the next exciting thing. Boredom is not a word you'll ever use in recovery. Boredom, when next time you say you're thinking, oh, I'm so bored, follow that up with what that actually means. I'm thinking about myself too much. The biggest part of this internal dysfunction is we are hyper focused on how we're feeling, how we wish we could feel, how we don't want to feel, and then whoever or whatever is responsible for that feeling. Right? We don't know how to take ownership of our own emotions. We just know this thing happened and now I feel and now I'm stuck. Right? And so my only solution is I've got to change how I feel. And so we follow our feelings instead of following our responsibilities. And that, in a nutshell, is the gist of recovery, is learning how to have feelings, have real feelings, identify what those primary feelings are, but still do the next right thing. Still follow our responsibilities, but as you guys know, that takes time. So here's signs, or this is what being ego-driven looks like. The first point, not asking questions. Right? We won't ask questions when we're presented with new information, or it doesn't even have to be recovery information. Just where we can have an experience where there's an opportunity to explore new ideas. We won't ask questions, because we already think we know everything, right? We won't explore, we won't apply critical thinking. We get so stuck in our emotions. And remember, the ego is that defense mechanism. And so one of the ways we think we're protecting ourselves is we just won't ask any questions. Because we think, well, I already know everything, or I'll figure it out later, or even if I did ask questions and I got some answer, or even if I explored this more in this scenario, it's not going to matter anyway. And besides that, we're scared to death to look weak, right? Because if I ask questions, then I'm implying I don't know everything. This is real, and this is how seriously messed up our thinking is. But it's a trauma thing. It's not, don't go to shame. We develop this manner of living, of thinking, of carrying ourselves, of responding to these experiences that leave us feeling overwhelmed, anxious, irritable, restless, discontent, trying to protect ourselves. But now is the time where we recognize, man, it just is not working. It hasn't really worked out for me. I don't have to live in survival mode, but I do have to be willing to open up, right? And do some things, even though I don't feel like it, even though I'm scared to death that everybody in the room is going to laugh at me, the minute I ask a question, I'm going to do it anyway. And of course, as we do that, we don't get back what we're expecting. What we get back is oh wow, well, thank you for engaging, and we can we can explore new ideas. Until then, if you stay stuck in the ego, you'll always be afraid to explore ideas. Second point, we ignore feedback that we don't like, because we see feedback as an assault on our ego, right? There's a lot of talk about what's the difference between criticism and constructive criticism. How do we know? Because we already come to the table with such a great sense of inadequacy. We already feel like we're not good enough. But in order for us to move past, we have to be willing to learn new things, new ideas. So it can seem like there's a fine line there, but it's not. That's just how we feel, right? I feel inadequate, but nobody's out to get me. Nobody's trying to demean me. Nobody's judging me. That's just how we feel. And so, just like that saying, the way we move through all of this stuff is just keep doing the next right thing regardless of how you feel. And that's how we begin to overcome it. We change our behavior. And ultimately what happens is as we change our behavior, even though you don't feel like it, the pathways in your brain begin to become restored. Your brain will actually build new pathways. But as long as we keep making decisions based on our feelings, our fears, we're going to stay stuck in this. That is the number one aspect of our internal dysfunction, is we live a life driven by our feelings, and then our ego to protect those feelings. When we ignore feedback we don't like, we also have a high need to be right. Right? So if we get feedback, then that must mean I've done something wrong, or I am wrong, and I can't have that, so I'm just going to completely reject your feedback. It's like we were just talking about this earlier today. If you want to learn how to be a plumber, you're not going to get very far if you go and hang out with a bunch of electricians, right? But if we want to learn how to be a plumber, then we hang out with plumbers and we just do what they do. We listen to what they talk about, and we pick up and we follow the things that they do, and then we become our own plumber. Recovery, or really anything in life, is exactly the same. But of course, overcoming this addiction, this internal dysfunction, our ego is constantly threatened. It's not really constantly threatened. That's just how we feel. Nobody's threatening us. No No one's really coming at us with, oh my God, you made another mistake today, you freaking loser. But this is all going on in our head. And so we've got to be willing to start breaking down this ego. There's the old acronym. You know what ego stands for? Ego stands for edging God out. This is a spiritual journey. If we had the power, if we had the courage, if we had the wherewithal to instantly follow new behavior, even though we feel so threatened on our own, we would have already done it. This is a spiritual journey. There's a power greater than we are where we find this strength. Another thing that we do when we're ignoring feedback or we're rejecting feedback is we would just want to debate it. Right? Well, I just don't, you don't know. And that might be true for you, but it's not true for me. And, we're very good debaters, or we think we are. I should say we're very persistent debaters. Right? We can debate anything, and what we're doing is we're really just going around in circles. Right? We're not open to anything. I'm just keeping myself closed off from any new ideas, any new information. I already know everything. I'm going to figure it out on my own anyway. I don't really want to engage in any kind of new process, because then that'll mean I'm not enough. Right? If I can't figure it out on my own, then I think that means it will prove that I'm not good enough. So in order for me to feel good enough, I have to earn my way in. I've got to solve all my own problems, which, as you guys understand by now, that's a recipe for disaster. The third point is we tend to only surround ourselves with yes people. Right? Our only allies are people who will agree with us. Now, just think about that for a minute. Just throughout your life, right? When you're upset about something, when your ego has been threatened, maybe you just got in an argument, or there's some sort of conflict. Who do you seek out? Do you seek out someone who will tell you the truth, or do you seek out someone who will agree with you? Right? And so we usually, we call our buddy who will just go along with whatever we want, and we dump everything off on him, and then we get to hear, yeah, you're right, man, that's messed up, they're doing you wrong, and that's where we want to live, because it's comfortable there, or we think it's comfortable there. It's emotionally safe. We don't have to do anything different, and that's why we stay stuck. So in recovery, that's a really good rule of thumb. In fact, I've heard that suggested, at AA meetings when you're trying to pick out a sponsor or a mentor or something. Don't pick out a person who you think you'd be good friends with. Oh man, that guy, he's really funny, and I like what he shares in meetings. I think we could hang out together. Wrong. Pick out the person who will tell you the truth, who will be honest with you, who will ride you, who will hold you accountable, who will do those things that we're so afraid of, but do it anyway. And of course that's what you're learning to do now. We tend to avoid and even dislike people who challenge us. And that's kind of the word challenge is very subjective anyway. Very few times do we have an experience where we feel assaulted that we're actually being assaulted, right? Or we're not really being challenged. It just feels bad. And the more you recognize that about yourself, the more you can overcome it. What you don't want to do with this information is go, oh yeah, it's not that big a deal for me. It's not that big a deal for me. Yeah, it is. We've developed this manner of living over a lifetime. Pay attention to your old reactions versus your new responses. And it can be, it's throughout the day. It could be as simple as, hey, where'd you put the butter? Or how, did you unload the dishwasher? Or you're just having normal conversations with each other. We can feel very assaulted, We can feel offended. You're unloading the dishwasher and someone says, oh, hey, let's put the plates over there in a different place. You know, that can be a very offensive experience, right? Because someone's challenging us, someone's trying to correct us. That's how we interpret it. When all that's happening is you know, when we were out of the room, other people were rearranging the kitchen, and I just didn't know the plates go over here now. You know, it's just not that big a deal. But remember, all this starts with that deep-rooted sense that I'm not enough. So we go through life trying to protect ourselves from that. So if someone suggests to you, hey, why don't you put the forks instead of in this direction, why don't you put the forks in this direction because they're easier to grab, we can completely lose it over stuff like that internally. You know, you may not say anything about it, but we're thinking it. We're thinking, man, what's wrong with me? Man, this is not right. Who does he think he is? Right? And then we're stuck. This is all leads to this self-defeating thinking. That's our internal dysfunction. We have a high need for control, obviously. If you feel out of control emotionally, then you're going to compensate for a high need. But that's the thing. We don't seek to control our own emotions. We seek to control our externals. You know, we do the one thing, that's what I love about the Serenity Prayer. We do the one thing we can't do, and we miss the one thing we could do. And that's why, you know, the third line of the Serenity Prayer is the wisdom to know the difference. Because we've spent a lifetime zeroing in on people, places, things, and situations, our externals, wishing this would change, wishing that was different. Oh gosh, I wish they were different. I wish this wouldn't happen. I wish this would happen. All the while completely avoiding the one thing we could be changing, and that's ourself, controlling our own emotions, controlling our own actions. But that's what goes to the wayside. High need for control, which leaves us in an all or nothing, or with an all or nothing attitude, right? It's we either get exactly what we want or just forget it, right? We don't know how to compromise, because, I mean, theoretically we may know how to compromise, but for us, compromising something is an assault to the ego, right? It means anytime, this kind of ties in over here to insensitivity, anytime something doesn't go our way, or anytime we're not instantly getting something that we want when we want it, the way we tend to interpret that is people don't like me, right? We personalize it. And so having an all or nothing attitude is what helps us survive. Just forget it. Just forget it. I thought we were going to the movies, and this is just taking too long, and just when all that's happening is our anxiety's building, we feel like we're losing a sense of control. That's all that's happening. When we're not losing control, we just feel like we are. Well, I already covered that. We fail to control and take care of ourselves while trying to control everything else. Okay, the fifth point is unable to ask for help. You know, that's a big one. Unable to ask for help. And that comes down to asking for help is a sign of weakness. Right? If I am asking for help, then what I'm saying is I require help, which means I should be able to figure it out on my own. I should be able to handle this thing on my own. And so if I ask for help, I'm letting the whole world know I'm not perfect. I'm not superhuman, right? I'm not shameless. And I can't have that, right? All or nothing. We've got to either be completely on our game, or perceived to be completely on our game, or nothing. There's no in between. That's a big one. This being scared to death to ask for help is probably a better way to describe it. And another way is, or another point on asking for help or not asking for help is if I do ask for help and I hear the word no, right, we literally personalize every bit of our experience. Well, what's wrong with me? So we can't risk that. And so it's like I've heard it described as, what was that Tom Hanks movie where he's the FedEx guy, he's stuck on an island with Wilson?
Castaway.
Yeah, Castaway. That's us. We're like stuck on this island. And we're in complete survival mode. And we don't want to accept any help. We shouldn't need to accept any help. And it's just us trying to build our own life and prove our worth. If I can just build a big enough hut and kill my own food and cook my own food and make my own clothes, then I'll be good enough. It's wrong thinking. It is part of our internal dysfunction. It's what's killing us. And of course, the reason is because of what we think all that means. It's an assault to our ego. We're not really protecting ourselves anymore. When we arrive at step 1, admitting that our lives have become unmanageable, this is that unmanageability. The way we think, the way we're so hyper-focused on how we feel at any given moment. You might even answer the question, if someone asks you how you're doing today, you might even answer with an emotion, with a feeling. Hey, how are you doing today? I feel okay. When that wasn't even the question. But it just shows how our brain is so programmed on how we feel at any given moment, which it's not an accurate reflection of how we're actually feeling, because that's kind of a whole other topic. But remember, we're either angry or we're depressed, extremely angry or depressed. So we're not even really sure what we're feeling. We just know I'm not getting my way right now, right? Things aren't working out my way, and it's somebody else's fault. And if only this other thing would change, then I wouldn't have to feel like this. We've just been stuck in that thinking. And even if it does work out my way, eventually it's all for nothing anyway. What's the use, right? Discouragement. So that's, it's the same coin. Extremely angry, depressed. Extremely angry, depressed. Extremely angry, depressed. So recovery, just not even just recovery, but living a healthy, normal life, whatever that is supposed to be, but it's everything in between where we've been living. We've been in this all or nothing, one extreme to the other, for a very long time. And it started developing long before we started drinking and using. Okay, the sixth and last point on this one is a high need to win. And one of the ways, or some of the ways we go about that is needing to have the last word. Right? We're always competing mentally with the people around us. Always, you're in some sort of conflict or some sort of debate or argument or whatever. Always got to have the last word. Right? That's a victory for us. In reality, it's petty and childlike and all that stuff. But what's going on with that? It's this, I need to win or else. Or else what? Or else I'm no good. Think about there is no balance in our thinking. It's extreme. I must win or I'm no good. Which that's not even winning, right? It's a serious distortion. That's not what winning looks like. And so we're always competing mentally. And one of the ways we do that is you don't even have to say anything out loud. Just driving around town and you see a cool car that you've always wanted, and there's this guy and he's got it, and so you're thinking in your mind, you're critiquing the guy, and he probably didn't even pay for that, and he probably doesn't even know how to drive it, and we're always competing mentally. And this is what it's so crucial to really pay attention to your own thoughts. Just because you don't say this stuff out loud doesn't mean it's not there. It is there. What you don't want to do is, since I never say it out loud, I don't need to look at it. No, it's killing you. Hanging on to this thinking is killing us. We compete mentally by, one-upsmanship. The variables in the gestation period of the African monarch, but just ridiculous things. I think we talked about this recently. We're really good at like memorizing just bizarre, odd information, and then we'll pull it out in an effort to make ourselves sound smart. We're avoiding us. We live a life based on how we feel and what everyone else or what everything else is doing. We don't know us. We don't know, our identity. This is a huge part of our identity, or who we think we are. We're easily embarrassed, angry, resentful when ego is threatened. Well, that's not normal. It's not normal to be angry when your ego is threatened or when you're challenged. Maybe what you just said, or maybe what you're talking about isn't correct. Well, what would be wrong with getting correct information? That would be a good thing. We should want to know if we're wrong. But we're not there. In early recovery, we're just not there because of what we think it means. If I think I'm right, but I find out after having a conversation with you that I'm not right, and you've got new information to offer, wow, that's a good thing. That would be a very human experience. But in our internal dysfunction, if I think I'm right and I need to be right, then you come to me and you've got new information, that's an assault, or it feels like an assault. Because what's really happening is it's reminding me, it's reaffirming to me, the addict, I'm not good enough. But that's not what's happening, that's just how we feel. So, of course, we're getting to the solution of all of this. The key to all of this whole overcoming addiction, wrong thinking, cognitive distortions, all this stuff that's associated with our past internal dysfunction and external chaos, is being willing to discover who we really are. And that's human. That's a human. There's a human in there. What we think has been in there is either more than human or less than human. All or nothing. We see ourselves as less than, and so we're constantly trying to perform more than. And anything in between, just as a reminder, I'm not enough, and we become easily discouraged, we become extremely self-defeating, and that's why we can have short periods of success, always followed by some crash and burn period. Our life has been a roller coaster. Oh, I gotta prove my worth. I gotta prove my worth. I gotta prove my worth. Oh my God, boom. I gotta prove my worth. I gotta prove my worth. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to live like that anymore. So these are all the characteristics that are involved with this. This is where our solution lies. When you remove drugs and alcohol, I say this all the time. You look at all this chaos. Well, it's no wonder we become addicts and alcoholics. There's a lot going on in there. This is not a healthy self-image. No wonder we drink. No wonder we always need instant relief, because this is a nightmare. But the good news is we don't have to live like this anymore, but we do have to be willing to learn, and we do have to be willing to apply, and then we'll get new. So when you remove drugs and alcohol in early recovery, we literally don't know how to act. Right? So now all we're left with is just our feelings. Now we got all these feelings I don't know what to do with. Which is, they're not really feelings, they're conditions. I got all this anxiety. I've got I'm angry, I'm mad at the world, I'm mad at my family, I'm mad at my ex-boss, I'm mad, I'm angry. Or I'm depressed. Immaturity, these aren't in any kind of order. Immaturity is a huge characteristic. And that's why, we were talking about this not long ago when we were doing the stuff on the brain. Our emotional maturity stops developing the minute we become impacted by trauma. So, for many of us, we're emotionally 9. We're emotionally 13. We're emotionally 6 or whatever, and which is fine. That's not an assault. That's just the reality. That's why, as adults, when we feel threatened, when things aren't going our way, when we're at a loss of control, we behave just like a 13-year-old. We make decisions just like a 10-year-old, or whatever that is. I think it's very important to you should identify that within yourself, just to be aware of it. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. That means you're getting honest with yourself and you're willing to move forward, because it's a huge factor. So, and I've heard it say, immaturity or recovery is just about 60% just growing up, allowing ourselves to mature emotionally. We don't know how to deal with our emotions. So we tend to deal with problems by complaining and sulking, throwing temper tantrums. And remember problems, the way we define problems will change. In early recovery, a problem is anything that leaves us feeling some negative emotion. I'm irritable, restless, discontent, and I shouldn't have to feel like this. And so then every responsibility is off the table until I can feel different. Well, what's one thing that we know we have a long history of using to feel different? Obviously, alcohol and drugs. So when you remove that, we get stuck. But that's okay. Be stuck. Just keep talking about what you're thinking about. Inferiority. This is the characteristic. It's part of that. It's part of that ego. We tend to feel inferior, and so we'll compensate. So we'll, on the outside, we feel like we have to have it all together. We definitely need other people to think we have it all together, which is, it's that all or nothing. We're not inferior, but we just feel inferior. And so we've compensated for how we feel. This is why, we have such a hard time being consistent with personal responsibilities. And we can instantly fall back into just being stuck in our feelings, stuck in our emotions. And so we use externals to prove our worth, which is typically our performance. So if I'm doing well, then I'm acceptable. But if I'm not doing well, then I'm not acceptable. That's the thinking. But that's not true. Everybody has experiences where they just don't do well. But to us, it's an assault. It's, oh my God, I'm not enough. We're constantly trying to prove that we are enough. And being in inferiority, we're scared to death that we don't measure up. This is why we tend to avoid people. Talks about that in the promises. Our fear of people will leave us. We are very afraid to kind of step out of things that we're already very familiar with. We don't like meeting new people. We don't like trying new things. We definitely don't want to be around a big group of new people unless we can get lost in them. That's inferiority that drives all of that. Inadequacy, the third one on the characteristics is inadequacy, and that's just that deep-rooted sense that I'm not enough. But because we feel so inadequate, if you feel less than, okay, remember the all of these traits. If you feel less than, The dysfunctional way of going about it is acting like we're better than, or we're more than, not necessarily better than. When new ideas come along, we will reject them. Because just like we were talking about asking for help, if I receive new ideas or suggestions or a new way of doing things and I follow that, then that will reaffirm for us that I wasn't enough. I should have figured it out on my own, right? But because I've done this and I've done that, and I taught myself how to drive a car and play the guitar and swim and all these things, all these other external things in our life that we could do really well. And so because of our inadequacy, we feel like we got to figure this one out too. And that's why we tend to go around and round and round. It's not real though. If you keep judging yourself based on your performance, we fail. The fourth one, insecurity. This is a good way to identify this. If you have a lot of anxiety, which we do, that comes from a sense of insecurity. You know, I don't fit in, I don't belong. We're scared to death how people perceive us. We can feel unsafe emotionally, even though we are safe. And so think about that. You know, and you're probably beyond it now, except for a few experiences here and there. But you know, remember, for the longest time, we've just maintained this undercurrent of anxiety, right? It's just always there, always there. There's an old saying: a person doesn't know how much pain they were in until they're no longer in pain. You know, when we get accustomed to just being anxious all the time, and of course reacting to that. Oh my God, I need this, I need that, I need this, I want to do this, I want to do that, I don't want to do this, I don't want to have to do that. And until we drink, you know, we need instant relief. That's one of the things that drives that drinking. When it's no longer there, or it's there a lot less, you know, recognize that, understand what's happening. It's because you're growing. It's not because your environment changed. It's not because, oh God, people finally got off my back. Oh man, things finally started working out for me. It's because you're changing internally. The way you see yourself in the world is changing. And so you have less anxiety. The fifth one, impulsivity, you know, and by the way, we all possess these. You know, everybody can possess these. We addicts, alcoholics, we possess these in excess. Impulsivity is just that rushing into everything we do. There's a difference between impulsivity and spontaneity. Impulsivity is oh my God, I got this great idea. Let's walk up to 7-Eleven and get some fountain drinks. Well, yeah, but dinner is in 3 minutes. Spontaneous is, hey, let's walk up to 7-Eleven and get some fountain drinks. Let's see, yeah, you know, it's a couple hours. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I took out the trash. I read my book. Yeah, it'll be kind of a fun idea. Impulsivity is that we don't think or reason. We don't take into account our personal responsibilities. All we know is shiny object syndrome, right? Oh my God, there's something shiny over there and I want it. And then boom, we'll leave people hanging. We'll leave our responsibilities hanging. The impulsivity is our number one characteristic, right? We are more impulsive than anything else. Avoid. Insecurity. This is one everybody thinks they don't have. Or I'm sorry, insensitivity. Our feelings are hurt easily. We tend to be, or because we personalize everything about our experiences, we can become very insensitive, because remember, it's an assault on our ego. And so we're trying to protect ourselves. So on one hand, every addict says, "Oh no, that's not true. I'm very sensitive. I'm the kind of person that stops and helps people change their tire in the middle of the night, and I do so many things for other people." And okay, when those things are convenient, but now you got to look at the ugly part of our dysfunction. I steal money from my mom all the time. I will get myself into trouble so that she has to leave work and lose hours to come to the police station to bail me out or whatever. That's not sensitive. We don't really make decisions based on how we're impacting other people, but we can do some good things sometimes. Recognize that. Remember, we were talking about this the other day. We got all these great qualities. We just got to flip them around. And in our insensitivity, we will drop every responsibility in order to go chase something that we want when we want it. Here's another big red flag is pay attention to this. Feelings hurt easily. Try to, next time your feelings are hurt, try to hit the pause button and try to identify what you're thinking. What do you think just happened? And work through that or talk about it. Come bring it to group, because we need to learn how to explore those experiences so you can move past them. Don't just get stuck in, "Man, this is bull crap," and then go sulk and complain and lose yourself and move yourself into craving. Handle it differently. What do I think is happening here? Don't get stuck in that, this immaturity, complain, sulk, and throw a tantrum. "Man, this is not right. This is bullcrap." In our insensitivity, we tend to rebel against people or what we consider authority figures. And that's always interesting to me. Of course, I recognize that in myself. But since I've been in recovery and since my thinking, I see the world differently. I see myself in the world differently. I don't even think in those terms anymore. But when I was trying to protect myself from the world, it's easy to pick, that guy, stay away from him, and that guy, what we consider an authority figure is anyone who has the power to assault our ego. Right? It's not real. That's just our interpretation. So don't nix that one. So we rebel against new ideas. We rebel against authority figures. We hate police. We, hate principals and managers and, me half the time, probably. But it's not real. Hit the pause button and ask yourself, what do I think is happening? I'm not getting in trouble. I'm just getting new information. I'm not being punished. I'm having opportunity. We have to learn how to see things differently, but you'll only do that if you're willing to take every thought captive. That's what the scripture's talking about. We have to take our own thoughts captive, look at them, explore it, recognize how you're interpreting it, and then add new information, which is what we get every day. We get new information. Don't just write it in your notebook and close it. It's there to start using, and this is pretty valuable stuff. And I talked about this one earlier, but think about what you're thinking about when things don't go your way. Right? When you're wanting something or you're wanting to do something, and whatever your experience is, it's not going the way you want it, how you want it, as fast as you want it. What's your next thought? People don't like me. People are against me. Life isn't fair. This is bull, right? Just all that, That's how we stay stuck. That's our internal dysfunction. Nobody is sitting around. Nobody, this scenario. Nobody. There's just not a committee that's meeting every morning at 7:00 in some big conference room trying to figure out how they're going to screw up Miles's day. But I absolutely used to think that way. We all think that way, right? When we don't get our way or we have a difficult experience, we can really believe that people are out to get us. We talk about it in group. Well, I was doing fine, but then, my mom and this and then that and then this other thing and, it's my boss and I was doing just fine until somebody else did or didn't do something. That's wrong thinking. It's insensitive. Okay, so we'll move right into the solution and then we'll be done. The solution is always so simple. But first you got to recognize the sickness. You gotta relate. Understand why. You don't have to know all the details. You don't have to memorize all this stuff. That's less important. What's most important is living in the solution, right? Understand, we should be able to look at that board and go, man, there is a lot going on in my head, in my thoughts, in my emotions that I wasn't even aware of. Here I'm thinking, I got it all together. I just need to not drink today, right? Wrong. And when we live in the solution, you won't want to drink today. We want to drink because of all this other stuff. So when we develop or we build a foundation in the solution, all that stuff goes away. You don't have a problem with 5 years from now. You're not going to be like, oh God, I hope I don't drink today. You'll be a completely different person. It completely leaves us. And I know in early recovery that just sounds like a pipe dream, but that's what happens. We have to become new, and that starts with understanding I've been sick for a long time, and then we got to learn about these three guys. There's the real self, there's the perceived self, and then there's the ideal self. We've been living in the perceived self. The perceived self is this guy that we think we are, we wish we were, but more importantly, it's who we need everyone else to think we are. Right? That's why we're afraid to make mistakes. We're afraid to ask for help. We can't show any chinks in our armor. I got to have it all together, or at least look like I have it all together. I can't make any mistakes. And of course, the way we go about all of that is when we are faced with some sort of accountability issue, we just blame it on somebody else. Right? So there's no ownership of who we are. We just kind of live in this fantasy identity. But the way we start moving toward this ideal self, the ideal self is who and what you are becoming, you're striving to be. And that one doesn't ever end. But the way we get to that is we start getting very honest about our real self, right? Who and what we really are. We were talking about this exercise a couple of weeks ago where, you just get a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of it. And then have a serious, honest conversation with yourself. On one side, you got who I really am. And on the other side, you got who I want to be. And if you're brutally honest with it, on the side where it says who I really am should look like liar, compassionate, manipulative, intelligent, hardworking, make a lot of mistakes, want to learn how. It'll be a list of negative and positive things, right? But in the beginning, we're either all negative, we see ourselves all negative, oh God, I'm such a loser, or we want to minimize, minimize the seriousness of our behavior. Oh no, there was one time I got in trouble and I lied my way out of it. No, we live a life of lies. We lie to ourselves every day. Getting honest with who and what we really are But we're afraid to do that because of what we think it means. Right? God, I don't want to put those things on paper. I'm not that guy. That'll make me feel bad. It's wrong thinking. No, but it's who we are. I mean, your car is red. But I know, but cool people don't drive a red car, so I can't have a red car. So I'm going to tell people it's green. This is how we see ourselves. We have to start getting honest with ourselves. In fact, the more we've been talking about it, I think we're going to actually do this as a group. We need to do this exercise as a group, and I'll walk you through it. But it's very powerful. Who and what you really are. What do you think of when you hear that? Just right off the bat, who and what I really am. Does it scare you to even look at that? Like, oh God, I don't want to go there. Anybody? Does it scare you? Okay, well let me ask this. If I said, who and what are you really? So one characteristic of who and what you really
are. Initially, I can come off as, I can not come off as, but competitive, or that both need to win.
You relate to this one. Yeah.
That can make you not want to ask for help.
So what do you? Let's go down that road a little bit. If you recognize this about yourself, and that's it's present. So that's pretty honest. What do you think that's about? What if you're not the smartest guy in the room? What do you think that would mean?
Advantages.
What if you're not the smartest guy in the room?
It can make you look at your past or yourself. Some inadequacies, or that can make you kind of maybe get analytical of yourself or that person. Why you're not smarter than them, and whatever,
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. So, okay, so that you just affirmed what we're talking about. Now here's the kicker, because you can keep following that thinking. Then I become self-critical. Then I start wondering, oh my gosh, where did I go wrong? This guy is smarter than me, or whatever. I'm just using that as an example because we all tend to think we're the smartest guy in the room. But with us, it's everything. And so what happens? We go into self-destruct mode because our ego has been impacted. We become self-critical. You start questioning things, all the stuff you just said. But now here's the kicker. What's reality? What's reality? What's a new way that you can view that experience like that? If you're not the smartest guy in the room, what does it really mean?
that means you have some weaknesses.
That's how it feels. That's how it
But
feels.
it doesn't really matter. Anyone, most likely, no one's really noticed or probably really is thinking about it.
Exactly.
Cares.
But that's the thing. Can you live there? And we can, but we have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to be transformed, because you're not going to just have an experience like that and intellectualize your way through it. But let me kind of open that up a minute. Okay, so we're not the smartest guy in the room. What's reality? Reality is well, it's not like we all showed up with the results of an IQ test. I mean, who knows who's the smartest guy, right? We don't. It's so subjective. We don't really know. All we really know is how we feel, right? We don't know if he's smarter, I'm smarter, this person over here is smarter. But addicts, that's a big one. That's why I threw it out there, because, part of our sickness is it's that need to be better than. We got to be better than. And so we've convinced ourselves, we're always competing. We think we know more than the pharmacist. We think we know more than the doctor. We think we know more than the guy who worked on our car. We're constantly critiquing and complaining the world. It comes down to, we think we're smarter than everybody, which is why eventually I'm going to figure this addiction thing out. But we don't see the world through the lens of reality. And the solution, the way we move through those, is recognizing that's just how I feel. That's the sickness, because it shouldn't matter. Like you said, it shouldn't matter. Who cares? Okay, so this guy has a lot of knowledge in whatever we're talking about. Big deal. The fact that it causes me to feel something negative, that's the sickness. What's going on with me that I didn't win? It's wrong thinking. It's all screwed up thinking. But then thank you for sharing all that, because you just summed up everything we're talking about. It's but we look to our experience to make us feel better, when we need to be looking at how we're responding to our experience. So the way we do that, perfect segue into the final point on the solution: stop following our feelings. I recognize that you're having feelings. I still experience that. There's so many times I have an experience, and it could just take me back to, when I was 15 and just felt like a loser. But follow your responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is we need to live a life in reality. Right? What's reality? Reality is I don't know who the smartest guy in the room is. Why does it matter? Well, it matters if you have an overwhelming sense of I'm not enough. And the way I'm going to be enough is I got to prove to everyone else I'm the smartest. So I'm going to talk about ridiculous things, and I'm going to debate, and I'm going to argue, and forget about fellowship or connecting with humans. Right? I'm on a mission. I got to win. That's our sickness, guys. That's what's keeping us so internally out of whack. Live here in this solution, right here. Learn the difference between your real self, your perceived self, and your ideal self. And of course, real and ideal go together. But you only do that, and you kind of were doing it with yourself. You followed it up with more information. So have those conversations with yourself. That's a big, and remember, it works the same way in the other direction. You know, you can also think, man, I'm the dumbest guy in the room, right? I got nothing to offer. I'm no good. But that's how shameful, shameless works. It's one extreme to the other. And it's the same sickness, and it's the same solution. Do you guys want to share anything? You guys want to add anything? I was going to keep it going, but I know we're running late. But I'd love to hear y'all's feedback on that too. You want to throw one out? One character and who you really are, who and what you really are.
I really feel that I need people to like me, sort of thing.
So do you recognize that keeps you in a kind of a constant state of proving to be likable?
Yeah.
Practice saying no. Next time somebody says, and it'll probably end up being me, next time somebody asks you, hey man, will you help me with that? Say, no, I'm busy right now.
Yeah.
If you're busy, be honest about it. But, pay attention to the things that you give up for yourself to then go be this likable guy. What's reality?
I don't need to be liked by everyone. I won't be liked by everyone.
And you're already likable,
Yeah.
but not everybody's going to like you. But think about that. If you're a likable person and there's somebody out there who doesn't like you, they probably have a judgment problem. But that's okay. They can have a judgment problem. It doesn't concern us.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to overcome, and we're not going to just wake up tomorrow and just have all this emotional stuff settled. But the more you understand what's happening with yourself, the more you can kind of work your way through it. And at the end of the day, I'll finish with this. You guys hear it all the time. It doesn't mean you have to know what to do in every experience. It just means you have to be willing to talk about what you're thinking about. The worst thing in the world you could do for yourself is live that double life. Have all this stuff going on in your head, but never talk about it. Hey, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. I got no problems. Everything's good. When it's not, our minds are spinning. Anyway, good stuff. You can share if you want. I don't want to cut you out. Did you want to add anything? It's okay if you don't. I appreciate you taking over the booth, the engineering booth. Nice. Okay. Well, we're out, and we'll close it out. Thank you very much.